On there, folks. Good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here on this Tuesday, first day of February 2022, about 12:57 p.m. California time, West Coast. Looking at the latest earthquake on the Earthquake 3D globe, shows a 2.6 earthquake, somewhat deep into the Gulf of Alaska region. Latest quake out there on the Earthquake 3D globe. Let's go ahead and check out some movement around the area here, including some activity up in the Vancouver Island ranges up there. You can see that latest earthquake, a 2.4 striking kind of close to the Strait of Juan de Fuca, just outside of Victoria, and some other activity kicking up here in the microquake range. Somewhat deeper movement up here as well. So kind of watching this area. Don't see too much movement up here, but definitely kind of kicking up there a little bit today in that region. There's the activity into the Alaska area, stretching up through the Cook Inlet area, up to the Denali area, where we're seeing kind of a swarm of movement around that area. And some of that earthquake activity fairly deep, at least down south at 2.1 around the Cook Inlet area at 113 kilometers. Some deeper activity kicking up there in that region of the state. The rest of the Aleutian Trench looks pretty quiet out here. One little earthquake, 2.8 along here, the Aleutian Trench. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench and the Japan Trench looks pretty quiet, except for down here close to the Philippine Plate. Getting a little bit of movement kicking up here after a little quiet spell of activity. Also around the East China Sea, 4.1 striking there around the Taiwan area and Japan area. Indonesia area kind of ramping up. We just seen a 5.9 here within the last hour and a half or so. Originally came in as a 6.4 earthquake. Got downgraded to a 5.9. That's somewhat deep in this area as well. Seen a trail of deep movement throughout this region over the last 24 hours. 177 kilometers for at least one of those earthquakes here around Papua New Guinea. And the 5.9 that came in was 129 kilometers. So pretty deep movement kicking off there in the Indonesia area. Down around the Tonga region, just had a 4.9 come in as well within the last about an hour and a half. Seen some movement out there once again, just south of the Hunga Tonga volcano, which is located right here. Of course, that's that volcano that popped here a couple, almost about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now. Time sure flies. Still seeing swarming of movement down there about 10 kilometers below the surface, at least for the default level there from the USGS. Kermadec Trench area seems to be continuing their activity as well with a 5.3 and a 4.9 along the Kermadec Trench. Working our way over here to the west, things are relatively quiet once again, at least for the 4.0 threshold. Some movement around the China area and activity up here just outside of Afghanistan in the Tajikistan area. Tajikistan, one of the two. Can't remember which one it was, but we'll get it. What else we got here? A little bit of activity into the, looks like just outside of, wow, Egypt's getting in a little bit of activity. Don't see too much movement here. 4.3 in the Egypt area. Wow. About 10 kilometers or so below the surface. Kind of curious about historical earthquake activity in this region. Regional activity doesn't show a whole lot. At least here on the map. Looks like some movement since about 1900 or so. Looks like maybe around the 5 to 6 magnitude range up to the north of where we've seen that earthquake earlier. But definitely well over here to the east. That's when we get into the larger earthquakes in that region of the world, just over here along the plate boundary. Spain, what do we got up there in Spain? A little 3.8. That came in last night, a 6.8 kilometer depth earthquake there in that region. Also some activity down here in the South Africa area. That came in late last night. Johannesburg area getting in on a 3.6 earthquake. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge and the, at least the northern part here, kind of getting in on a little bit of activity, 4.8 South Sandwich Islands has remained relatively quiet. Not seen too much activity being reported down there. South America, though, this was kicking up pretty good yesterday. Not a whole lot of renewed movement overnight, but still watching this area pretty closely. It did have a bunch of fours and whatnot in the deeper regions of the Peru-Chile Trench. Puerto Rico area, not as active as yesterday as well. Just kind of starting to see a little shift of movement up here, up to the north and to the west. Let's check out Hawaii real quick here. This is kind of lighting up pretty good within the last hour. Just off the coast here, a 2.0. 36 kilometers for the depth of that earthquake. Pretty scattered here. Excuse me. Only about 6 earthquakes or so. Man, I cannot kick this. It's been lingering. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know that it pops up out of the blue for no reason. It's almost like someone's, I don't know. It's weird. Weirdest feeling. Anyway, a very small amount of earthquakes here. Normally where we should see a pretty good amount in the southeast regions. Just really, really quiet here. And this is the all magnitudes. So it's kind of a little on the odd side for that lack of activity there in the southeast region of the Big Island. West Coast lighten up a little bit, including an earthquake down here in the Southern California region. 3.3, shaking things up there in the Los Angeles area. 15.8 kilometers below surface. This thing was felt pretty broadly over the region. Looking at the shake map out here, looks like the intensity levels reached up to at least light, and of course it was felt all over the place. Oxnard area looks like even up above the Lancaster area. So a little bit of shaking going on out there in that region. Looks like it was on the, not 100% certain which fault system it is, or which, yeah, let's see here, what do we got here? A couple different distinct faults that run through this area, and for some reason, let's see if I can back off here. Not getting the plates to, or the fault systems to pop up here on this map. But either way, there's definitely a bunch that run through here. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find that fault system here on this map. I got one here on my phone that, oh, okay, it's called the Puente Hills Blind Thrust Fault, is where this 3.1 hit. So I don't like it. I don't like how the USGS doesn't include all these other fault systems that run through here. Just the, I don't know, just why they pick and choose which ones. But anyway, there's a little thrust fault that runs right through here. That's where that earthquake struck this morning, it looks like, there in the region of Los Angeles. Also to the east here, some further activity along the San Jacinto fault zone. It's this fault system right up here, and unfortunately this thing isn't working. I'm not for sure why. Let's refresh the page, see if we can get it to pop up. Nope. I wonder why it's not working. What am I doing wrong here this morning? Normally we'll get if you put the cursor over the red lines here, we'll give you the fault systems. I'm not seeing that. It's kind of weird. Anyway, it is what it is. We know there's fault systems all throughout Southern California, and it's a mess of them, let me tell you. Salton Sea, a little bit of activity down here. 1.9, nothing major going on along the Brawley seismic zone or the Imperial Fault. Just a typical day down there, looks like, in Southern Cal. Ridgecrest area, a little bit of activity as well, just looking pretty normal. And some movement along the San Andreas Fault here, along the creeping section next to the Diablo Range. Some activity is in that region as well. What else we got? Not a whole lot going on through the eastern part of Sierra Nevada. Some movement, a little bit of activity up here outside of the Antelope Valley region and off to the mountains here to the west. Reno area looks fairly quiet. Northern California has been popping up a little bit here with earthquakes in the 2 range, and the earthquakes of these, the depths of these earthquakes, pretty deep down there into the subduction zone of the Cascadia. Of course, Cascadia megathrust sits right off over here where we've seen this this 2.6 come in. right smack dab on the Cascadia locked area. So activity ramping up here in this region. Of course, we have seen a increase in tremor activity. Let's go ahead and bring that map up here real quick so I can kind of explain a little bit about what's going on out here. 140 epicenters. That was yesterday. I can only imagine overnight and in the day today that number will be increasing, ultimately applying back building of pressure here along the Cascadia subduction zone. And that's kind of why we're seeing those earthquakes upstream, if you will, from the tremor. Tremor kind of sits down, further down dip here. If you had a cross section of the map here, you would kind of see the dip go in a fashion inland. Of course, inland, the further you go, the deeper it is into the subduction zone. Of course, deeper you get into the hotter areas, and melting and all that stuff begins with the volcano activity along the mountains. But anyway, this is kind of where we're seeing the activity upstream and right around the locked area of the Cascadia. So we've got to watch that pretty closely, right? 322 years of buildup. Who knows when it's going to happen? What intervals? 200 to 600 and something years. So we're way past the 200, not quite to 600 yet. But it can happen whenever it wants to happen, right? We'll see. We'll definitely see what happens here. What else we got here? Oklahoma still rocking and rolling out there. We are seeing a little bit of movement out in Idaho as well on the somewhat larger size. This area north of the Sawtooth Fault System been showing some movement, kick up here in the mid-3 range. That activity is showing up on some of the Yellowstone thumbnails here, which is the overview of Yellowstone National Park. It's going to be this activity right here. Some of those threes popping up here on the map, I believe. As far as local seismic activity, I'm not seeing any. There's not a whole lot to chat about there at Yellowstone currently. But Idaho definitely bumping up there a little bit in the magnitudes and the multitude of quakes ongoing there at the Sawtooth Fault System. Some movement down through the Idaho area, or the Utah area. And of course that quarry blast that kicked in last night at a 3.2 magnitude earthquake right around the base of this mountain. Looks like some type of operation going on here. Drilling, mining, right? It's kind of why they're doing quarry blasts. There's something going on here. Not for sure exactly what they're digging for, but it's definitely a pretty large operation going on there where that 3.2 quarry blast hit last night. Oklahoma and Kansas, some movement kicking up here as well around the oil rigs and the oil fields, gas and oil fields, and up into the Salina area as well. New Madrid zone, nothing being reported here on the USGS map and the East Coast, pretty quiet. So yeah, just kind of watching how the ball rolls today, folks. Just kind of keeping an eye on things. Sunspot activity is ramping up. We haven't seen any renewed movement at the Three Sisters volcano. Of course, put out a couple updates on that yesterday about a bulge being reported around the South Sister there with uplift. They believe it's ongoing uplift since about 1990 or so. But go check it out if you haven't watched that video. It's kind of an interesting scenario up there if that thing were to have some volcanic eruptions. What was I looking for? Solar ham. This site right here kind of shows solar weather. Still forecasting a G2 class storm later tonight. It looks like February 2nd after midnight sometime. Looks like 85% chance of that CME hitting us and creating the auroras at the higher latitudes. 40% chance, a pretty good chance it looks like at the mid latitudes, and then calming down after that. But C flare activity still remains elevated. With a X flare potential 10% chance and a M flare at 25% chance, and all this activity ramping up from this pretty giant sunspot here, 2936, and looking back prior, or at least beyond that, we got some other sunspots there kind of ramping up that will be turning in view as well to the Earth side. But this one's kind of a bullseye at the moment. Anything that pops off will definitely be affected here on Earth. All right, guys, we're going to jump off here. Have a great day. We'll see you a little bit later on this evening with the update. And just stay safe out there and be prepared, folks. Chat you a little bit later.